Well, it's yet another medium-sized SUV for the Australian market from a new brand. And once again, it's from China, but this one is not electric. This is the Jaecoo J7. This is a brand that comes from Chery, which you might know already, but this is another new brand, and they're bringing this medium-sized SUV to Australia with petrol and plug-in hybrid power. The hybrid does seem like a pretty interesting car actually, up to 1,200 kilometers of claimed range there. Could be a nice fit for a lot of people, but is it any good? Let's go for a drive. The J7 medium-sized SUV is the first model to come from this Jaecoo brand, which is itself a part of the Chinese Chery automotive empire. The Jaecoo J7 is available with both petrol and plug-in hybrid power, which uses the same platform underneath that Chery uses for things like the Tiggo 7, the Tiggo 4 and the Tiggo 8 SUVs. Pricing starts from a very sharp $34,990 drive away for the two-wheel drive J2 Core variant. And that rises up to $42,990 drive away for the up-spec and all-wheel drive Ridge variant. These, along with a mid-spec two-wheel drive track variant, are all powered by a 1.6-litre turbocharged petrol 4-cylinder engine. This makes 137 kilowatts and 275 newton meters, and it runs through a 7-speed dual-clutch automatic transmission. At the top of the J7 tree though is the plug-in hybrid Summit SHS model. That stands for Special Hybrid System. And you've got the addition of an 18.3 kilowatt hour lithium iron phosphate battery for electric motivation, and that joins up to a 1.5 litre turbocharged 4-cylinder petrol engine. Now, overall, this gives you a claimed 90-kilometre electric-only driving range and a claimed 1,200-kilometre overall driving range with a full tank and full battery. This model, while being only front-wheel drive, is the most expensive of the lot at $47,990 drive away. And it does have a similar level of equipment, that is a lot by the way, as the all-wheel drive Ridge variant. And for the full rundown of specs and details and pricing, have a look at our price and specs story on Drive.com.au. The Jaecoo J7 comes to Australia with an impressive 8-year unlimited kilometre warranty and with 8 years of capped price servicing and roadside assistance. There's also going to be 30 to 40 dealers for Jaecoo around Australia, which will be a mixed combination of Jaecoo, Omoda and Chery dealerships. Now this J7 is a medium-sized SUV, so there's room for 5 on board there, but it's worth pointing out this car is around 4.5 meters long overall. So for reference's sake, a Toyota RAV4, it's about 100 mils, around 150 mils longer than this vehicle, so it's definitely not the biggest medium-sized SUV. You've also got a fairly swoopy sort of roofline here, so it's not necessarily going to be the most practical choice, I think, but in terms of style, I think this does cut a pretty cool figure on the road. It looks a little bit different. This car does share a platform with the Chery Tiggo 7 underneath, but obviously it looks quite different. And I'm going to run you through the interior and of course how it drives as well. What you see on the inside of this J7 is pretty common these days, I've got to say, in terms of the way a lot of car makers are designing these interiors. So we've got a very minimalist setup here, not a lot of actual physical buttons going on. You've got a big infotainment display here and a fairly minimalist design overall. Now this is the hybrid, and you can tell that because I don't have a gear shifter here. The regular 2-litre turbo model has a gear shifter here. Instead, we've got the one up on the steering column here, a bit of a stalk setup. So we've got a bit of space here around the middle, which is nice. We've got one wireless charging pad and a bit of storage space here for whatever it might be, 2 cup holders and a center console, which is actually pretty big. And you've also got some extra storage down here. So in terms of storage space, this car does work quite well. But to get to a lot of functions, you do have to dip into the infotainment display, and that does take a little bit of getting used to be honest with you. The menus aren't that intuitive. The response speeds, the quality of the screen, that's all really good, but some of the functions that you might be looking for are somewhat buried, so it's going to take you a little bit of time to figure out what's what in there. But you do have wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto here, so for most people, I suppose, you're going to just jump in, plug the phone in, stick it on the pad, and go off like that. And from that point of view, it does work quite well. Now, in terms of the driving position, seating comfort and that sort of thing, this is pretty good. We've got nice adjustment through the steering column and the seats. There's no issues there. And visibility is overall not too bad. Now, we do have this fairly swooping roofline here, which does give you a bit of a lack of visibility as you turn your shoulder to look around the back here. You do have a 360-degree camera, which does help. And you'll notice that the rear view mirror as well has a fairly funny kind of perspective to it, I suppose. It's a bit more of a fisheye lens almost when you're looking through it. Just a small detail, but one worth noting, I guess. But otherwise, this Jaecoo J7, it looks and feels modern, it feels well made, and it does have some practical touches, which I think is important. Here's the second row of the J7, and first things first, as usual, that's my driving position up front there. I'm around the 1.8 meter mark, just under 6 foot in the old money, and I've got a bit of legroom left over here actually. It's not too bad in that regard. I do have a bit of toe space as well, and headroom is not too bad considering you do have a swooping roof here and a sunroof as well. I thought the headroom might be a little bit worse, but I think Jaecoo have worked around that by dropping the seating position in terms of height in the back here. It's actually noticeably fairly low. So there's a couple of issues there. I think when I'm sitting here, my thighs are definitely off the seat in front here. I can move them down the front, which makes it maybe a little bit more comfortable. But I've noticed that the visibility from the back here, because the seat is relatively low and you haven't got that much glass here in the design of the door and the windows, so you do feel maybe a little bit scooched in the back here without a lot of visibility, and it could be an issue for kids, I think, if you're sitting a little bit lower in the seat wanting to see what's going on in the outside world. Some kids might find that a little bit frustrating, but we do have ISOFIX points on the outboard seats here. There's 3 top tether points as well, but I'm not sure whether you'd be able to fit 3 baby seats across the back here if you wanted to do that. It might be a little bit more restrictive for width. I'm not 100% sure yet, so when we get this car in for more tests and reviews, we'll have a closer look at that. So it's comfortable, it's pretty good. We've got USB-A, USB-C power outlets here. We've also got one air vent and some map pockets, so you're pretty well sorted from that point of view. Just the visibility isn't amazing, I think, and the seating position isn't as natural, I think, as others in this segment as well, but I think it's not too bad at the same time. Here's the boot of the J7. You're looking at around 412 litres here of space according to Jaecoo's numbers. And I think it's not too bad. It's definitely not the biggest in the segment overall, but for most people, I think this would do pretty well. You do have a flat load space here, which works okay. Now, it's worth pointing out that this is the plug-in hybrid model. And I know that because if I pull this up, there isn't a full-size spare hiding under there. If you go for the petrol-powered model, all-wheel drive, you do get a full-size spare, which is awesome. But if I dig down a little bit deeper here, you'll see there's a bit of electronic stuff in the way, unfortunately, there. But there is a bit of spare space actually for some extra bits and bobs if you need it. But otherwise, that's the amount of boot space you've got. There are some tie down hooks here. You've also got a 12-volt power outlet and of course a luggage blind. Now, I've been driving 2 variants of the J7 on this launch, and the first one I want to talk about is the one I'm driving at the moment. That's the SHS Super Hybrid System. So we've got a 1.5 litre turbo, 4-cylinder petrol engine, but that is matched to an electric motor and an 18 kilowatt hour battery pack. And you've got what is mostly really an EV driving experience, I think, in this car. You don't have a lot of petrol kick in really at any time, and when it does kick in, it does in a fairly imperceptible manner, so it does work pretty well in that regard. And it's worth pointing out that Jaecoo engineers have chosen to keep this battery at a minimum level of 25% all the time, and the reason why they've done that is to maintain a fairly EV-like driving experience even when that battery runs down. And that is a good thing because there are some other vehicles I've driven and they're a plug-in hybrid. You use all that battery up, but when you have, then you've got only a petrol engine, and you've got a petrol engine in a relatively heavy car because you've got that battery, and it just doesn't work out as well overall. And I do like the ride quality that we have here as well, even on this high-spec model with the larger diameter wheels. Bump absorption does feel pretty good, I think. It's not trying to be too sporty, it's not trying to be too firm. And the steering feel isn't terribly sporty either, but I don't think that's too bad of a thing. This is a around town SUV at the end of the day, so it's fairly relaxed feeling through the steering. And because this petrol engine is A, quiet, and B, not on very often, there's good level of refinement on offer as well. Now, Jaecoo does claim that this J7 hybrid does have a large combined power output of over 250 kilowatts, which is a huge number. But I've got to say, after driving it, I don't feel that from the driver's seat. For reference, a Haval H6 GT plug-in hybrid, that feels much perkier than this. I think this is plenty fast enough. You don't really need to be shooting off from the lights all the time and that sort of thing. There's no issue with this thing feeling slow, but it's definitely not as fast as others out there. But of course, one of the big benefits that you have here is fuel efficiency. So the vehicle in hybrid mode will use that battery where it can, where it's at its most efficient level, but also use a bit of petrol at the same time. And you can use around the mid 5 litres per 100 Ks, which is, I think, pretty good going. Now, when that battery does drop down to that 25% level, you'll probably use a little bit more petrol as the engine works to charge the battery up at times. But that being said, this does work quite well, and it would make sense for people to plug this in as often as they can to reduce running costs and also give a better driving experience overall, I think. Now, we haven't been able to test the 1200 kilometer driving range in this review just yet. We just haven't had the time. So that's something that we will look into in the future. But of course, also, we have done an overseas review. Trent has driven this car in South Africa and he put that to the test. And there is a video of that on Drive.com.au. So that is definitely worth checking out if you want to know a little bit more about this hybrid system. Now, the other variant that we have driven here is the top spec all-wheel drive internal combustion, so non-hybrid, and it comes with a 7-speed dual clutch automatic transmission. Now, it's not as smooth as this hybrid overall, and it does fall into that trap that a lot of dual clutch vehicles do. It just feels a little bit jerky at times and non-linear through the throttle response. So it'll often drop a gear and really surge forward without you noticing much of a difference in where your foot is positioned on that throttle. So it can catch you off guard a little bit. It's not as smooth or as easy as it could be. So that is something worth paying attention to. But that vehicle, in terms of ride quality and refinement, it does work fairly well. It sounds a little bit thrashy at times when that engine is working overtime to get you up to speed, but I think for the value for money point of view, it does rate quite well. All in all, I think this J7 does work well as a comfortable and easy method of getting around in the suburbs. For me, the hybrid is definitely the pick, not just because of the potentially lower running costs overall, even though it does have a higher starting price. It's got a much smoother, easier, and more serene driving experience, which I think does pay dividends when you don't have that dual clutch to handle. Now, for those who do want a little bit of off-road capability, the petrol-powered model is the way to go at the moment. This hybrid is, at the moment, only front-wheel drive, and it's not going to offer any real off-road capability, but the all-wheel drive model with the turbo petrol engine does have an active rear differential, which does help, and off-road capability is actually not too bad for a soft roader, so you do have that there if you want it. But like I said before, in terms of family usage, running costs, and all of that sort of thing, I think this top spec hybrid would be the way to go. Well, there is a lot to like about this Jaecoo J7. In particular, I think this plug-in hybrid model could be a nice choice for those people who want a bit of electric but don't want to go full EV just yet. There's good value for money there. I think the driving experience is pretty good overall as well. And of course, it's backed up by an 8-year warranty, which is a pretty big deal these days. Now, we don't know everything that we could know about this powertrain just yet in terms of real fuel economy, driving range, and all of that sort of thing. So we will get a bit more time with this car in the future to get to know it. But in the meantime, I think it's definitely worth consideration.